Hey guys, what's up? It's Shelby and welcome back to my channel. So today I'm doing another Mystery Monday video, even though today again is not a mystery. It is going to be more of a wrongly convicted case. So yeah, let's just go ahead and get right into this video. Alright, so this case takes place in Detroit, Michigan, which is, I usually actually go to Detroit a whole lot as a kid. I had family in Detroit. I still have family in Detroit, so this case hits kind of home for me. But yeah, we are going to be talking about Davontae, Sanford, and the bloodbath on Ruin, I think is how you say the street name. So, alright, so in August of 2007, there was a quadruple homicide that happened on Ruin Street, and it was brutal. So let's just go ahead and talk about what happened that night. I have to look down so I can read you guys all the names of the people that were there. So Michael, also known as Big Mike Robinson, D'Angelo, I think is how you say it, McNorrell, I think is how you say it again, Brian Dixon, Dixon's girlfriend Nicole Chapman, and Valerie Glover were all sat in the living room that night. 7-year-old Michael Robinson Jr., also known as Little Mike, was asleep in his bedroom towards the back of the house. So they must have heard somebody trying to get into their storm door, and so Dixon actually opened the front door to be face to face with an intruder holding an AK-47. Dixon then tried to turn to his right to grab his gun that he had sitting there, but the intruder just opened fire on the room. Robinson was sitting on a chair in the living room, and next to him was a .30 caliber pistol, and he had reached over to grab it but was shot 9 times. McNorrell was sat on the couch next to the window and was actually shot through the window by a second gunman. Dixon was actually shot, and so was his girlfriend, and he tried to actually run to her, but they both ultimately collapsed to the floor. Glover had put her arms up, and bullets had hit her arms and her thighs, but she had ended up running or crawling away to the back bedroom, and she hid under the bed of Little Mike. After about 5 minutes, Glover said that the gunshots had stopped, and she could hear Little Mike crying from his bed, asking her to lay with him, and she was bleeding from 5 gunshots. At about 11:55 p.m., she had dialed 911 after walking into the living room and seeing what had happened. When she walked into the living room, she saw Big Mike slumped over on his chair, dead. McNorrell was sitting on the couch. He had been shot in the neck. Dixon and his girlfriend Chapman were laying between the coffee table and Robinson, or Big Mike, and they were both dead. She was bleeding out. Little Mike was fine. He didn't have any harm done to him, but she was bleeding from multiple gunshots, but she did dial 911 and waited for the police to show up. A neighbor across the street, who was actually cousins to Robinson, was actually waiting to go pick his wife up from work that night. He had heard multiple gunshots go off, and he had looked over, looked out the window, but saw nobody, so he just brushed it off and just waited until he had to leave. And as he was leaving to go pick up his wife from work, he saw the 2 men leaving the house. They opened fire on him, and they shot just a couple shots at him, and he was actually I think he was an ex-police officer, I believe, or a police officer, one of the two, so he had shot back, but nobody was hurt in this little shootout before all of them just left. So the police arrived about 1 a.m. or so, and they searched the house and, found all the bodies and stuff like that, and they interrogated Glover as well as Little Mike, and they actually brought in police dogs, and a police dog actually tracked a scent from the ruined house to this vacant lot. The officer was searching that area when Sanford walked up to him. He actually only lived a couple blocks away from this lot and the house. The officer stated that he knew that Sanford was investigating But Sanford had just kind of walked by and the officer started questioning him, but Sanford didn't really want to help out. He didn't really know, what had happened, but they started to chat anyways. So Sanford, it turned out, actually was related to a former homicide detective who the officer knew. The officer called him up and told him to be truthful. After this phone call, suddenly Sanford knew about the suspects and he knew what had happened. He said he had seen men running through his yard with guns and he knew them from a local, gang that was, in this area, and he said if the police wanted, he would show them where they saw him running. So the police officer took him in an unmarked cop car for about 2 hours around the neighborhood before returning back to the crime scene. After this, we don't really know what happened. All we know is that at 4 a.m. they took Sanford in for interrogation. Alrighty, so Sanford was questioned and interrogated a couple times, and every single time his story had changed. In his first confession, he had said that him and 3 other friends met up at a Coney Island. He had mentioned that they were going to rob Milk Dud, who was apparently Michael Robinson, but that name was never ever even linked to Robinson. So he obviously didn't know about him. But he had said that him and his 3 friends went to Coney Island to plan this out, that they were gonna go and rob him. I mean, he was a known drug dealer, all of that. And on their drive there, he had said that he wanted to get out and he didn't want to be a part of this anymore. So they stopped the car, he got out, and he walked all the way home where he waited, and his friend had jumped through the fence after a while and told Davontae that he had shot somebody. Davontae also had mentioned the guns that they allegedly had with them and that they were shooting, but none of the gun casings that these guns would have gave off were ever found at this crime scene, and these are the guns that he said that they used. So he was let go, and the next afternoon the police went to go pick up the 3 friends that he had said were involved in this. They were interrogated, and they had solid alibis, so they were ultimately let go because they were all away at this time and they had solid alibis of where they were. And none of his story really made sense because the Coney Island that he had said his friends and him met up at was closed for reconstruction. None of the guns that he said they used were matching the bullet casings that were found. He didn't match any of the descriptions that the witnesses had said that they saw. He said that there was 4 of them when there was only 2 men spotted leaving this house. The only thing that I could think of that would put him in this is, according to Glover, when she was in the room, somebody walked in, a masked man walked in and had asked her for something, and she had said that his voice was kind of childlike. It didn't sound like he had a lot of bass to his voice. He had sounded like he was a young child, and at this time Sanford was only 14. So pretty much in the next 2 stories that he tells police, he just fits into place what the police already know. He pretty much is just filling in his story to fit the police's description of what had happened. Pretty much is what he is doing. The police are just hounding on him. He's like the only person they have. He's the only person who confessed to it. This is all they really had to go off of for this quadruple homicide. So they were just going in on him. I think a lawyer or something was just telling him what had happened at this crime scene, and he was just putting into stories what would have happened if him and his 4 friends had went there. His second story, he had mentioned that him and his friends met up at a park instead of this restaurant, and he used the correct guns this time. Like, he had mentioned the guns that had been used at this homicide. And then in his third story, he had mentioned that they drove away in a van, which is different from the car that he had mentioned. In the last two, his two friends took off in the van, and him and his accomplice left the front door, which would explain only seeing two and not four. He just was kind of getting coerced into just making his story fit, which really sucks. I mean, he was 14, he was very impressionable at this time, and I think he just wanted to get the police off of his back. His second interrogation was never recorded, only the last part where he had mentioned that he did it. According to the police too, he had mentioned that he knew where the bodies laid, like something only the killer would know, but that was never recorded or anything for them to actually have proof of this. So Sanford actually just pled guilty to these 4 homicides in 2007, and he was convicted of this quadruple homicide, and I'm pretty sure he was to spend like anywhere between 40 to 60 years in prison. But only 2 years later, in 2009, somebody actually confessed to this quadruple homicide. This man was Vincent Smothers. He had been a hired hitman to take out Michael Robinson, or Big Mike. You know, he was in a gang, he was a drug dealer, all this stuff, so he was hired to take him out, pretty much. He had said that from August to September he had been staking out this house, you know, watching around, you know, waiting for the right time to do this. He had been waiting in his I think he said he had a Jeep or something that had tinted windows, and he would sit and watch all night, you know, sometime during the day and stuff like that. He had even known that his next door neighbor sits out on the porch all morning. So Smothers actually decided to call up his friend for some assistance. His name was Ernest Nemo Davis. So Smothers actually asked him to come with because he knew that Big Mike was a drug dealer, and drug dealers usually keep guns around the house and usually have associates around them that have guns. So he just wanted to make sure that he had somebody, you know, to watch his back while this ultimate takeout happened. He said on the afternoon of September 17th, he grabbed his baseball mitt and glove, and him and Nemo decided to just play baseball in the street. And he had noticed that that neighbor that I had mentioned wasn't sitting there, and he decided that this was the perfect day to do this because he figured there was no witnesses around to notice anything suspicious. So he decided that he couldn't shoot Robinson if he was leaving or entering his house. He wanted to do it inside the house so nobody would see him ultimately. So he wanted to see if the storm door was, you know, kept unlocked, kept easily, you know, unlocked and stuff like that. So that night he had told, I guess he waited in the backyard and, you know, got their masks on and got ready to do this. He said once it got dark out, he went to the storm door and he told Nemo to watch the silhouette that was in the window. This silhouette was ultimately Dixon, who was shot through the window. He was trying to get the storm door unwiggled when the inner door opened and he was faced with a man that he didn't know. This was Dixon. Smothers had said that Dixon looked down, saw him, and he was unarmed, so he saw that, you know, he needed to grab his gun. He turned to grab his gun, but he started open firing, trying mostly to hit, you know, Dixon and Robinson because Robinson was his ultimate target, but he did. And he said that he heard Nemo shoot the silhouette through the window. So after this happened, Smothers said that he took inventory on what had happened. He looked around the room and saw 4 bodies that were either dead or fatally injured. He had told the police exactly where they laid and exactly how they laid. So one thing that really nobody knew, not even Davontae was the fact that Smothers went to go look around the house at these bedrooms. He checked the first bedroom and nobody was there. Then he checked the second bedroom and saw little Mike laying on the bed. Davontae had never mentioned this, but Glover did mention this to police, that a masked man came into the room and had said stuff to her. And he did mention that he saw him laying there and he had said something along the lines of, everything's okay, just go back to bed. And he saw Glover laying under the bed, and according to him, he said that she said, please don't kill me, please don't kill me, and he said that he wasn't going to and left. But Glover's story differed from Smothers. She had said that he came in asking him where something was, and or he was going to kill her, and she said that's when she said his voice sounded childlike, that there was no bass to his voice. After that, the two snuck out of the house, and again, this part was not in Davontae's confessions, which was ultimately proven to be true, that when they snuck out, the neighbor who had been sitting on the porch all the time had walked out, and he had started open firing on the neighbor, and the neighbor ultimately shot back, which is proven by 2 gunshots at his house that were taken before they ran off. So Smothers actually said that for the past 7 years he has been saying that I am the one who did this with Ernest, and Davontae had absolutely nothing to do with this. And it did take police 7 years or 9 years, I think, 7 or 9 years to reinvestigate everything and find out that Davontae was not even, a part of this. And Smothers actually said that the police asked him to testify against Sanford, to say that he was there so that they could keep this man in prison for something that he didn't do. And Smothers thought that that was just awful, to keep this young man in prison for something that he didn't do, that he knows he didn't do, because he and his friend are the ones who actually did it. They were the ones who were there, and Davontae had absolutely nothing to do with this. But the police were adamant to keep Davontae in prison. So in 2007, Davontae was, prosecuted and sent to prison. And just in 2016 is when he got out and all charges were dropped. So he spent quite a while in prison before, they ultimately couldn't keep him there anymore, because they didn't have any evidence to keep him in there. All they had was his confession that did not match anything that had happened, and they had Smothers confessing to it with every single detail in the book, so it was like they couldn't keep him there anymore, so they ultimately released him. I'm pretty sure that he did sue the police officers and stuff for this. I saw it on some articles and stuff that he did. He is now 23 years old, and I know he talks out quite a bit. I watched a YouTube video with him on it and stuff like that. But I remember when this case happened, I remember seeing it all over and stuff, and I remember when he got released, I remember seeing that he got released and stuff like that. So I thought this was a good, story to tell, because it is so sad. It was like they tried so hard to keep him in there for something he didn't do at the age of 14. I really don't think a 14-year-old could pull this off anyways. These were grown as adults. I mean, I don't think there was any way that they could have even pulled this off in the first place. A whole bunch of 14-year-olds. He had said that the people that he was with were a bit older, but still, I don't think teenagers could have pulled something like this off anyways. Just going by what had actually happened, I don't even believe that that could have happened. It was definitely a planned attack. Like Smothers said, he was hired to be this hitman and to do this, and he staked out and, watched all this stuff for a month. This was obviously a planned attack, kind of gone wrong, but I mean, it was obviously something, he knew that the neighbor wasn't watching. He knew that, where the storm thing was, and he knew to have backup, and he, all this stuff just added up, and yeah, Smothers is actually in prison still, serving 60 to 100 years for 8 different homicides. Well, not really different homicides, but 8 homicides. So Yeah, thank you guys for watching. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you guys want to see next down below. Don't forget to follow my social medias. They're all linked down below as well. I post on Mondays and Thursdays at 1:30 Central Time, and I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!